Hey everyone, it's Ben Hardy here, and in today's video we're going to be talking about used car and new car prices and how I was completely wrong about what's happening in the market. So yeah, we're going to have to just dive right into it, to be honest. So let's get to it. Now, I recently made a video about this whole situation that's been happening for like the last year and a half, where car prices have just been constantly increasing, and I talked about how it seems like everything's kind of been flatlining and in some areas slightly declining, and I guess I was a little bit too optimistic with that video, because we have some new facts and figures and it's a little bit depressing, but let's get into it. So first thing you need to know right now, 89% of buyers are paying over MSRP for a car, or within at least 5% of MSRP, which is not too crazy when you dive into the 5% part of that fact, right? Because when you take into account discounts on new vehicles, even when vehicles were heavily discounted, a 5% discount off of MSRP was actually relatively reasonable. That was pretty average, but still, there's a large portion of people that are paying over MSRP for everything, and we see it with the advertisements from dealers, where everything from specialty vehicles like Porsche 911 GT3s to not specialty vehicles like a Kia Telluride, for example, are all going for over MSRP, and people are buying them. It's not like they're being priced at these crazy numbers and people aren't buying them. People are buying them. I recently went into the Porsche dealership in downtown Salt Lake to talk to them about a couple things, and they had a couple of GT3s on their showroom floor, and I just asked them to humor me, and I said, how much are these going for now? And they were 29. One of them was a 2019, and it was a GT3 RS, and it was going for over $300,000, which is well over $100,000 over original MSRP. And I was just completely blown away. But that's just what prices are going to now. Now, the next big fact that is pretty discouraging, but is a reality now, is the average price paid for a brand new car now is $45,872. But the average MSRP of a brand new car right now is $45,209. So that shows that most buyers, on average, are paying over MSRP for cars. But the other scary part about the statistic is, right before COVID, the average brand new car was like $39,000-$40,000 roughly. So we've seen a pretty large increase in price for the average brand new car in terms of the transaction price. The thing that's funny though is when you look at transaction price versus the MSRP back then, the average MSRP of a car back then was still just a little bit over $40,000, and so the average MSRP of a car hasn't increased all that much. It's just the transaction price has increased a massive amount. So what that means is automakers have slightly increased their MSRP, but the dealerships have drastically increased their markup on the cars itself. And so, yeah, that's kind of what we have so far, but here's where things get a little bit dicey. Like I said, it seemed like values have kind of just flatlined with a lot of cars, and some cars, you know, especially with the trade-in values and everything, because dealers try to stay ahead of the game, right? And so if trade-in values go down, that's usually an indication that retail values are going to go down. It typically happens where the trade-in values are associated with the wholesale value. Typically how it happens is the trade-in value or wholesale value will go down first, right? The values at auction, all that kind of stuff, before you see those retail values at the stores go down. And so that's what I was seeing. Right? I was talking to different dealerships and everything, and they were telling me that, yeah, they're offering less for cars right now because the wholesale values are kind of going down. Everything, the market's softening is what they were all saying. But it seems like it's this ebb and flow that keeps going back and forth, and now what seems to be happening is the market values seem to be going up again, and I think there's a few reasons why this is happening. So the first reason why I think this is happening is because of all the wonky stuff that's happening with interest rates right now, and I think that's going to cause the values to slightly fluctuate up and down. Right, the Federal Reserve has announced that they're going to increase interest rates over the course of the year, and so that's going to increase interest rates obviously on mortgages, but also on car loans as well. So that's going to change what a person can afford. Because interest rates have been so low over the last year, people have been able to get into much more expensive vehicles than they would have before, because they can get a relatively low interest rate on the car, or ridiculously low interest rate on the car. So getting a low interest rate means they can afford a more expensive car that'll still fit within the monthly payment that they have set aside for themselves. So with that going up, right, you think that that should alleviate the buying pressure, because people are like, oh, well, I can't afford that anymore, and so then, you know, that'll kind of bring down the prices. But then the other thing that's happening is you have a lot of kind of like panic buying that seems to be happening, because people know that the interest rates are going to be going up. It seems like people are now jumping in and trying to purchase things at the lower interest rate before those rates go up. And it's crazy. There's been some of that with the housing market, but that, you know, buying a house takes a long time, but buying a car is pretty simple, and it's a pretty quick process, to be honest, if you know the actual like financing part and everything. And so it seems like people are jumping in and they're trying to get cars and get these loans on cars before the rates go up a massive amount. And so then it's kind of, like I said, it's this back and forth of the values are kind of like it seems like one day they'll go up and then the next day they'll kind of go down. It's this interesting ebb and flow. And then the other thing that's been happening is on the new side of things with the manufacturers. What's been happening over there is you have manufacturers that will get flooded with a shipment of microchips, and so they'll be able to release a bunch of new cars, and so they'll kind of flood the market for a second. That happened with Ford with the new Bronco, for example, last year, where they got a bunch of microchips and then they got a bunch of Broncos delivered to customers, and so then the values on those softened quite a bit because there's a bunch of the market and a bunch of people are selling them. And now, right, we're kind of in this situation where we're just waiting again for another shipment. Everything's kind of slowed down, and so the values are kind of starting to creep back up, and this is kind of just happening across the board. So like I said, it's an ebb and flow, but all of the predictions for this year state that the automotive industry, and I kind of mentioned this in another video, is probably going to, in the US, going to sell somewhere around 15.5 to 16 million cars, which is still significantly less than what the industry was selling prior to COVID, which was just over 17 million cars. And I know you're going to be like, well, that's only a million cars less than what we're supposed to be selling. That's a lot. A million cars is a lot. I mean, that's how much Tesla sells in an entire year, and think about how big that company is from a market share perspective and everything. So the point that I'm trying to make is we don't have enough new cars being produced, and on top of that, right, we have all this crazy stuff happening with interest rates and everything, and so it's causing all sorts of things to happen from a buying perspective. And there was a ton of buying at the end of the year, right, which happens every single year because business owners and a bunch of people are trying to get tax write-offs, and vehicles are a great way to do that. And so you have this whole kind of frenzied situation, and it's kind of made the values go all over the place the last little bit. But if I were to make like one, you know, again, this is just my complete guess, this is not set in stone, this is just a prediction. If I were to make my prediction what's going to happen, I would say that over the course of this year, and I guess this is going to be a little bit more negative than my last video, I think that car values, used and new, are going to actually creep up a little bit over the course of this year, despite the interest rate increases and everything, because we're still having the supply chain issues and everything. I think that it's just going to cause values to slightly creep up over the course of this year and a little bit into next year. But I believe that 2023 is going to be the first year where manufacturing is going to be almost as much as it was prior to COVID. I think that year it'll probably be at least 16.5, if not 17 million cars produced. And so then that year will kind of alleviate things, and that will be the year where things will truly flatline or slightly decline a little bit. And then by 2024, I think that we'll finally be in a normal car buying world where there will be lots of cars on dealer lots, lots to choose from, and there will actually be some negotiating happening instead of paying over MSRP for every single vehicle. Now that's going to sum things up for today's video, going over the crazy new and used car market. I want you guys to let me know what you think about everything that's been happening and what your strategy is about this whole situation that's been happening. And I know I've already made videos about my current strategy, so if you guys want me to make another video, like an update video about my strategy throughout this whole market, kind of what I've been doing, I guess, to make the most of it, right, as a buyer, then I can kind of make an update video on that. But other than that, if you happen to be stopping for the first time, I would really appreciate it if you would subscribe. And also, if you guys want to suggest video topics for the future, I'm completely open to that with this channel. So just comment that down below as well, and I'll see you.